My name is Jeremy Johnstone, and a little bit of background about me. I actually worked for Yahoo for almost 6 years. I started off in the address book team, went over into mail team, worked in the messenger, but most importantly, I worked in the connected TV team, which is what this topic of this talk is about today. I actually left Yahoo on April 1st of this year, and I'm now currently a developer advocate for the LinkedIn's platform team. While at Yahoo, as I said, I was on the Connected TV team. I was on the team for a little over 2 years, helped launch and basically promote the platform through CES in 2009, continuing on from there. And then I have a long history of working with JavaScript in many different platforms, from server-side Node.js and doing Rhino stuff and writing parsers for JavaScript and PHP, and pretty much every exciting and crazy thing you can possibly think of with JavaScript, I've done it at some point in time. So first of all, I kind of want to start off, who has actually heard of Yahoo Connected TV in the audience here? Surprisingly few. It's really sad that there isn't more people out there that know about Yahoo Connected TV, because frankly, in my opinion, it's one of the most exciting platforms right now for JavaScript. It allows you to basically do all of the things that you've been doing in the web browser, all the things you've been doing on the server side with Node.js, but do it actually on your television, and do it to enhance the TV watching experience and not basically try to replace it like some other products have done in the space. But instead just actually kind of combine and bring in new content and new services that actually enhance people's TV watching experience. Because frankly, most people, when they actually fire up the TV, they don't want to browse the internet. They don't want to pull up a web browser. Your average mom in Kansas doesn't even understand how to use, a Wiimote to be able to point on the screen, let alone do anything else. What they want to be able to do is just get to the content that makes the most sense to them. And with JavaScript on the TVs, you can actually bring on all these developers like yourselves that have experience and get up and going quickly and easily. So first of all, just kind of a brief agenda here. I'm going to kind of cover what is Yahoo Connected TV for those of you who haven't heard of it before. I will also cover why would you want to develop a widget. Obviously, that's an important question. And then after that, we'll kind of get into how do we actually develop a widget, and what is the environment like, and how do you get up and running. And then finally, I'll conclude with what you can do with widgets in general and just give you some examples of some of that. So first of all, JavaScript on televisions, who's ever heard of something like that? Well, I mean, we've already have it on browsers. Pretty much every browser out there under the sun supports JavaScript now. We have it in mobile devices, from the iPhone all the way to the first class support that's in the touchpads that are outcoming from WebOS pads. Then we also have on the server side with Node.js, and then a bunch of competing solutions out there. But so why not TVs? And in this example right here, in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll actually see an example kind of the experience. So what this is a full screen widget here that's actually has a TV signal that's over on the left-hand side. So if you see that little box kind of that's being outlined on the screen, that is actually a TV signal showing a World Cup game. And then here you actually have a ability to see some stats about different games that are going on. And then across the bottom you see all the different games of the World Cup, and you can actually go in and select which one and see the stats, see what the current scores are, things like this. And this was a widget that actually launched last summer basically to coincide with the World Cup. So what is Connected TV? First of all, it's based on Confabulator. Who here in the audience has ever heard of Confabulator? Quite a bit more hands there. So Confabulator, as everybody knows, is the widget engine that ran on Mac and Windows. It was brainchild of Arlo Rose and Ed, and basically what they did was they brought a kind of like the precursor to dashboard widgets, for all the Mac users out there, to both Windows and Mac users. What we actually did at Yahoo is we went in and modified Confabulator, ported it to run on an embedded Linux system. So all the TVs that have been sold since 2009, your mid to high-end TVs from Samsung, Sony, LG Vizio, Toshiba, they actually have Linux running on the televisions. What we did was we actually got the manufacturers to all go in and port and put in Confabulator onto the platform. Confabulator, if any of you have not used it before, it uses SpiderMonkey internally for its JavaScript engine. It is part of the development for TV widgets. We went in and architected a ConTX framework. It's loosely based on the MooTools class pattern. Allows people who have some experience with MooTools to jump right in and immediately get going. But at the same time, if you're not familiar with it, it is basic JavaScript, and it allows you to pretty much do anything you want to do on the platform quickly and easily. And then, as I mentioned previously, 6 out of 10 of the top TV manufacturers out there are now actually running connected TV on their devices with the TVs that they sell. So why would you want to develop a TV widget? First of all is market distribution. Currently right now, there are over 70 models of TVs in 135 countries with over 8 million TVs, current stat as of this morning, that are in the field. Obviously, with that kind of adoption and that many devices out there, you have a broad reach that you can actually have for your platform. And then on top of that, with some of the new things that are getting ready to launch, like the App Store that Yahoo announced back at CES in January of this year, you can actually even charge for your widgets and make money directly from the widgets by selling your content. Obviously, we're all here at JSConf. I don't need to reiterate this too much, but it's JavaScript. JavaScript rules. So why would you not want to develop something on the platform? It's also easy to get up and running. There's an integrated development environment that I'm going to show you here that runs on the Mac or Windows or Linux, and it's easy to go in and quickly develop a widget. It's an open platform, so anybody at any company can go in and develop a widget. You don't actually have to strike partnership agreements with Yahoo. Pretty much any widget that can actually pass the QA process can be launched on the platform. And then, of course, no presentation would be complete without the GNOME business plan. Build a widget, profit. So what does it take to actually develop a connected TV widget? So first of all, you have to have a computer. I mean, that's pretty much a no-brainer there. A text editor of any sort, whatever your personal preference is. I use TextMate, but you can use whatever you would like. And then a virtual machine. The two that are supported are VMware and VirtualBox, but you could obviously, if you have familiarity, you could probably get up and running with just about anything that can run an Ubuntu VM image. Then also, you need to get the Yahoo TV widget WDK, something you can download from connectedtv.yahoo.com and quick and easy get up and going. Obviously, you have to know JavaScript. It's something that a lot of people out there, especially when I've been doing a lot of the customer support in the forums, a lot of people think, well, I understand jQuery, so I understand JavaScript. Well, that's not exactly the case. jQuery is obviously written in JavaScript, but you do need to understand JavaScript, especially JavaScript outside of the browser model. So if you've done JavaScript in Node.js or other places like this, you'll fit right in. Also, additionally, it helps to have a TV that's supported for testing. I was actually supposed to have several models of TVs up here on stage with me today, but they didn't make it. But they're not required, but it does make it easier for testing purposes. And then also a vision for an awesome widget. And the purpose of a TV widget is not to bring like a web page into your TV. It's to actually bring internet content into an environment that's actually geared towards and kind of socially acceptable for the TV watching environment. So for example, when you're sitting down with your family, you want to be able to go in and find content on the internet that is actually quickly accessible and is in point and click fashion that you don't have to do a whole lot of remote interactions to be able to get to the content. So the example that I'm going to give today is a LinkedIn network streaming widget. What this widget does is it is a great example of consuming a REST-based API. Basically, anybody who has an existing API out there, you can quickly go and throw up a TV widget based around this API. I spent maybe 3 or 4 days total working on this, and most of that time was actually working on getting an OAuth library ported into the that worked on Confabulator. Unfortunately, there wasn't any good pre-built libraries that worked inside of that environment. As I mentioned with OAuth, it is a great example of handling OAuth UX in a widget. So basically, you have to go in and be able to do out-of-band OAuth, and how do you message that to the user? How do you make it easier for the user to put in their PIN code? So this will be an example of one way of doing that. It also shows an example of a full screen environment. So what you can actually do is normally, and I'll show you some of the examples when we get to the demo, normally, a widget is in a sidebar, so it's kind of sitting on top of the TV watching experience. So in the full screen mode, you can actually replace the entire TV screen with your own content. But in this case, we're doing it in TV overlay mode, which means that we're laying some content on top of the TV experience. So as we'll see in the demo, it's actually a ticker bar that shows across the bottom of the screen, and it shows your network updates from people that you have on LinkedIn. So why LinkedIn? LinkedIn right now is currently the professional identity for most people on the web. If you have a professional identity, you have your resume, your contacts, everybody, predominantly speaking, goes to LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is the source of truth for that. It's also a great place to go and find out more information and insights about your work environment, and also to be able to learn new things that will help you further your career. Has over 100 million users around the world. Obviously, I'm on the platform team, so I'm a little bit biased here, but it has a powerful platform that allows you to be able to drill in and get a lot of information, a lot of resources. Obviously, a widget didn't exist yet, so it also seemed like a good target, and it's where I work, so I kind of have to throw my employer a bone there too. So, all right, we're interested. So how do we actually build a widget? All right, first of all here, you'll see that I have VMware Fusion up and running. VMware Fusion is what I'm actually using, but I have also used VirtualBox extensively. You can actually, if you go and look on the blog or look on the Connected TV blog or look in the forums, I actually have some VirtualBox scripts that actually allow you to get up and going real easily with Vagrant. But right now today, I'm just using VMware Fusion following the install instructions that are available on the website. So I actually have one small problem currently right now with the OAuth script that I was not able to fix in time, so I'm going to cheat just a little bit here. Forgive me. Okay. And now, so to actually start off the widget environment, what you would, first of all, you would go in and download the VirtualBox image. This is a pre-configured image or a VMware image that allows you to be able to get up and running with Ubuntu without having to worry about installing Ubuntu, installing the dependency packages and everything. So it's a pre-built image that's available off of the Connected TV website. Then after you would do that, you would install the latest version of the WDK. It's just a standard package there. And then after you have that, you'll actually see that inside the applications menu, you have a TV Widgets menu. And here we're just going to fire off the latest production simulator. So here's actually the widget experience. This is similar to what it would look like if you were actually running on your television screen. So pretend this black space right here would actually be the TV signal. Unfortunately, I don't have a TV tuner card on this laptop, so I can't actually show you a simulated TV experience. But just pretend that the black is a TV. Along the bottom here, we have what's called the widget dock. This is examples of all the different widgets that are running on the platform. And you can go in and just, these are all the default widgets that come with the TV simulator, but there's also a ton of other sample code and widgets that you can get out there. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and select that LinkedIn widget. So when we load up in here, we can actually see that we have a sidebar experience. So again, this is laying on top of the TV signal, so you would actually be able to see the sidebar there, and then it'll just be laying on top of your TV. Now, it's also possible to do a picture-in-picture mode, so it's kind of hard to see on this projector screen here, but if you can see, there's kind of a crosshatch on the right-hand side now, and then the TV is actually put into a picture-in-picture off to the side. So either way, it works both ways. So first thing we need to do is we need to sign in to LinkedIn. I need to be able to get an OAuth token so that way we can actually make the request to get the network updates. So here, I'm going to go ahead and do that. So here we see an experience, kind of one example of a OAuth UX experience here. So here we just have some standard text. I have a URL that I need to pull up in my PC that's separate from my television. And by doing that, I'm now shown the OAuth login page here. And we're given a 5-digit code, so 34530. So what we're going to do is type in that code. And now that we've typed in the code, we click Verify Code with LinkedIn, and boom, we come right back to the main screen again, and now you'll see that the sign-in button is actually disabled, and now we have the Stream Network updates. So Stream Network updates, if I go ahead and hit enter on that, we'll see that the sidebar experience is put away, and now we're in a full screen mode. The TV would be still playing here in the background, and then we have a ticker bar that shows the LinkedIn updates that are going across the bottom of the screen. So you could actually do tons of different things with this. You could have like a Twitter feed that's pulling across the screen here. You could go in and put up like maybe IM pop-up windows and say like maybe you want to initiate a chat while you're watching TV. You could have it to where it's detecting what you're currently watching on the television screen and showing more information or more content about the TV show that you're watching. So say maybe you're watching Lost and you want to see some relevant news about Lost. You could have a widget that goes in and shows, ticker information about that. So that is the experience there. So let's actually dig in now and look at some of the code that makes this work. So everybody can read that? Font size big enough there? So first of all, there's a widget.xml. This is kind of a description file that goes in and sets up some meta information about your widget. I'll actually show you a link to a GitHub repository that shows you a template version of the widget, and then this way you can actually go in and just cut and paste in the relevant values. But essentially what we're doing is we're giving it a unique identifier, we're giving it a version number, a name, who wrote it, copyright, and some description information, and then some icon images. Then, so when a widget starts up, the very first thing that it loads is the main.tv file. So what we've actually done is, if anybody who's actually developed a confabulator widget before, you understand that one of the main ways that you did that in the past was you go in and create a whole bunch of XML markup, and then you'd throw in a little bit of JavaScript, you'd throw in a little bit of styling information, and then you would actually have your widget. We found that that was actually more complicated for people to actually get up and running with their TV widgets, and instead we wanted to have a standardized look and feel like buttons, look vaguely similar to the same. We had a whole bunch of controls. So what we've done is we've actually removed almost all of the XML artifacts from developing a confabulator widget, and instead have it all done through JavaScript and rendering in real time from JavaScript. So the only piece that's actually left of the XML experience is we have to have the widget tag and then tell it to load the script. So in this script here, which is the init.js, what we're doing is we're pulling in the context framework. So right here, this first line, you'll see the include line that pulls in the framework. Then we're going in and pulling in some event handlers, some API. This is just custom code that belongs to this widget. Pulling in an OAuth library, pulling in base64 support. And then also, we're loading up 4 different views. So if you remember back when we were actually looking at this widget, there was number one was a snippet, so that's one view. Then when we went into the sidebar experience, there was like a main screen, so that's the main right there. The ticker is the full screen view that actually has the ticker bar going across the bottom of it. And then OAuth is the actual OAuth screen where we actually did the out-of-band authorization and the PIN code. So here we actually get into some of the first actual pieces of the framework code. So first of all, here we're going to do, what we're doing is we're actually starting up an application and creating a new application, and we're telling the application what the views are. So in this case, we're just mapping a view ID to a specific view class. So classes are something that's reusable. So maybe I had 3 different ticker screens and they all had different content. I could actually go in and specify 3 different IDs and all have them from the same view class, and then they could actually internally switch based off of what was going on in that view. Then a couple default things we have to set up is we have to tell it what is the view ID for the default view. In this case, it's the view main. So this way, if you hit on the top title bar or if you are navigating inside the widget and you need to get back to the home of the widget, this is kind of like the home screen of your application that you're developing. Then the settings view ID, we need to know which one is your settings view. In this case, the settings view for this widget, which I can go back and show you, is just a simple about box that says some information about the widget. But if you had more detailed settings, there's actually a green button that you can press on your remote control to get into the settings. We have to obviously know then which one is your settings view, so when the user hits the green button, we can automatically send them there. So let's actually go in and kind of dissect one of these views. So we'll look at the most basic one first. This first one here is going to be the snippet view. The snippet view, as you can see, we're just going in and we are creating a new context class. As I said, those of you who have used Mood Tools, you'll see that there's a bit of similarity here. We're actually using kind of a pseudo-classical inheritance inside the framework. So we're extending from context system anchor snippet view. So an anchor snippet view is something that's always in the doc, and widgets can actually have multiple snippets that the user can scroll through whenever they're on your position in the doc. So additional ones that you could have, like that may be added real time, would be like a profile snippet view. So for example, say I was in the news widget. If I wanted to be able to bookmark a specific category so I could get in faster to that category, I could hit a button on my remote control, bookmark that, and then that would be a profile snippet view because it's tied to my specific user on the TV. Now, each one of the views, the view lifecycle, there is a init view, there's a create view, and an update view. Init view is kind of like an initialize method. It's anything that you need to do when your class is first instantiated for the first time. You would put that inside the init view. Create view is the method that's called whenever you, when your view is actually first shown for the first time. So this is where you actually go in and render all of basically the DOM nodes that would be going into the DOM. And in this case, for the snippet view, it's simply just a single image that's being put into the DOM. And then update view is actually called every single time your view is updated. So if I go to the main view, then go to the OAuth view, and then come back to the main view, my update view call would get called the first time whenever I first loaded in, and then the second time after I came back from the OAuth view. And I'll show you some more of that in a bit. Again, there's actually standardized controls for putting in most of the elements on the screen. So in this case here, we're just creating a new image. We're giving it a source, setting some v offset and h offsets, and then appending it into the DOM for the window. The main view has a little bit more meat to it. First of all, there is several images that make up this view. So when we're actually in there, I'll go back and show you. There's a image for the logo that goes across the top. There's another image for the fade that kind of does a menu on the background. There's also a reflection, which is actually the reflection of the image that's shown up on the screen there. And then what we're doing is we're setting kind of an opacity of 0.4, so that way it's a little bit dimmed out. And unfortunately, reflection is something that isn't wrapped into the framework as an easy helper method. So this is the 2 lines of code that you would do to actually reflect that image and flip it upside down, so that way it gives kind of a reflection effect to it. Then basically we have a text element that goes in and puts some text on the screen. In this case, get the most from your professional network. We put a little bit of a shadow, set the font sizes, colors, pretty standard stuff there, similar to CSS for that. Then we create 2 buttons. In this case here, we're actually creating text buttons, which is just a button that has a text label on it. We're giving a class name of control menu button, which is a way to be able to make the fat buttons that you would normally see in a menu section. And we set some labels, and then we actually set up an events block for whenever the events are fired. So in this case here, we're firing an onSelect event whenever the button is actually pressed by the user. And here we're actually going to say just load this view, which is the view-OAuth. So if you remember back to the init.js, we're setting up kind of a string ID matching to the view. Well, here's a first example of one of those being used, and that's where we're actually telling it to go in and load the OAuth view whenever that button is pressed. The next thing that we do here is we, for entering into the full screen mode, we're going to go in and same setup as a button here, but in this case we're going to load the view-ticker. Because it doesn't look good on the screen if there's a whole bunch of just black space. We have an empty space control, which kind of gives it a little bit of a crosshatched look, and that fills in the empty space that's left on there. So here you can actually see the first example of an update view. What the update view does is it checks this.persist.auth. So whenever it comes back from the OAuth view, we can actually pass parameters to the main view, so that way when it loads, we actually can pass some parameters. In this case, when the OAuth view is completed, it sets a auth equals true parameter. And then so if we are auth, then we just disable the link button, the sign-in button, and we enable the enter full screen button. The next thing that we do here is inside the focus view. So focus view is when your view first gets focused. So in other words, the user can control and move the blue focus up and down on the screen. In this case, if it was auth, then we force the focus over to the enter full screen view. Otherwise, the focus could actually be on potentially on a disabled button. I'm going to kind of speed through the OAuth button. Here in this case, and this is the first example of an init view. We're setting up some handlers here for different events that happen, and then we're setting a current position is equal to 0, so that's the position inside of that digits array. We have a back button control, which kind of gives it a title, and it also gives a quick, easy way for the user to go back. Some text. Then what we do is I'm actually creating an element core. So this is one of the most basic of the elements. And I'm putting a background image, background position, and background repeat, stuff that you would be familiar from doing web dev. We're actually going in and putting the code background. So the code background is actually, it's just 5 white squares on the screen. And then what I do is I'm going in and creating text elements to put on top of each one of those digits, or on each one of those white boxes. So that way when a user types a digit, we just fill each one of these with a single digit so it displays on the screen. There are other ways of doing this, but this was a quick, easy way to be able to get those 5 individual characters and make sure that they did correctly center on the center of the white squares as they should. Scroll through the rest of those there. And then, of course, there's a submit button at the bottom. So it's a standard text button that we've seen previously. So The other thing that we added as well is a keyboard. So there's a standardized control that allows you to be able to put an on-screen keyboard up on the screen. In the case of this one here that we're actually doing a pin entry keyboard, that'll also enable the number keys on the key. Whenever the user is selected on that pin there, they'll actually be able to type in the number keys on their numbers on their remote control. So instead of me having to go and select 3, 4, and then move my the focus around, I can actually directly just type those numbers in. So that's another convenience helper there. Then what we do is on the events here for on key down, what we do is we are creating a handle key press event, or a callback, and passing it, binding it to this so that way it's in the correct scope. So here on the handle key press event, we'll actually see one of our first examples of a full-fledged event handler. So first of all events handlers are always passed an event object. In this case, since this is a key event, on the event.payload, we'll get a key code. So if the key code is equal to 8, which would be the backspace character, there's also handy shortcuts that you could use, but I just use the raw key codes here because I happen to know them off the top of my head. And then so in this case, what we do is we just actually set the text back to empty for that box if the user hit the backspace button. Then if the key code, if the key is greater than 0 or equal to 0 or less than 10, in other words, it's a numeric digit between 0 and 9, what we do is we actually set the text to the event.payload.key, so that's what actually populates that box and puts a digit in the screen. Then I just do a little bit of management here, so if you keep hitting backspace, if current position is less than 0, we just set it to 0, so that way it's always on the first box. And then if current position is greater than 4, in other words, you've reached the end of the boxes, then we just jump the focus down to the submit button so that way the user doesn't have to move down there on their own. In the case of the handle submit button, what we do is we take the verifier. I'm just basically building up the verifier. And as I said, I had a problem with the OAuth that I didn't get a chance to fully resolve. So right now, I'm just forcing it to set the OAuth to be true. The clear key code fields, all this does is just loops over all of the different code fields and then sets our text to empty. In the case of the set short URL, what this does is inside of my code, I'm actually firing off a request to linkmy.tv, which is a domain I registered for this widget. So it goes in and fires off the request and sends it the URL that it needs to be able to shorten. And then when the shortened URL comes back, we're just going to set json.url, pass that in as the set text. In this case, we're actually, there's a message center that actually allows you to be able to pass messages back and forth between views and other pieces of your code, so you're not directly coupling a view to the data source. So in this case right here, if the message that was broadcast is a short URL, we go in and call the set short URL. Update view, in this case, we show the loading overlay, which is that spinner that you saw. We clear the key code fields, then we go and we get the shortened URL, and then when the callback comes back for that, when the message comes back, that's when we set the value. And then what I do is whenever the view comes in and the focus comes into the first time, we go in and focus the keyboard because the user, the first thing they're going to do is be typing in the keyboard, so make it as quick and easy as they can. So now the ticker view. Unlike the main view and the snippet view, so if you look here on the main view, it's extending from sidebar view. The snippet, as I previously mentioned, is extending from anchor snippet view. The ticker view is extending from full screen view. So the full screen view, what we do here, we have a create view. I'm basically building a container across the bottom of the screen, which actually encapsulates where the tickers are. And we set a background color so that way it has that little bit of a white bar. And then what I do is I actually create 2 text elements. So the reason why I'm creating 2 here is because if I'm scrolling one across the screen, I may get to that one completely off the screen before the next one, with still having trailing text there. So by having 2 different text nodes, basically when one's sliding across the screen, when it gets 50 pixels off from the right-hand side, what I do is I start the next one with a text node and then start scrolling it and keeping it just evenly spaced off of that. And we'll get to that code here in just a second. And so that makes it to where you can actually have this neatly flowing text across the screen that looks like it's constantly updating. There, and I throw in a logo on the screen. Now, when we go into update view, what I'm doing is I fire off a set full screen video mode, and I'm telling it to do a pass-through. So in this case, that way the TV signal shows up and it doesn't have a black screen if there was a TV signal on device. And then I'm also going in and just, this is a bit of a cleanup that I did in the widget here for, because I was expecting a TV to be here. And that was to go in and resize the view plane back to the full size. So for example, if you remember when I put it in picture-in-picture in sidebar, when your widget goes into full screen mode, if you're going to have TV pass through, you are responsible for making sure that the TV signal is the appropriate size for your background. So in this case, we want it to be full screen. In the case of hide view here, this is whenever another example of a widget lifecycle. So when the view is actually taken off screen, we want to stop the ticker because otherwise that ticker would still be scrolling in the background even though the full screen view is not on screen. So think about you're consuming CPU resources moving this text across the screen. Obviously you don't want to do that when the user can't actually see it. Same thing with destroy view. Destroy view is whenever your view is being garbage collected because of memory management. You're off screen, we need to go in and clean that up. And in this case here, all we're doing is just calling kill on the animation and then setting the animation equal to null. So when the start ticker, the way this is actually done is using a custom animation. So with the custom animation, I'm firing every 50 milliseconds, and I'm telling it to update animation and then return true. In other words, keep running the animation from there. And then I call animator.start, and I pass in the custom animation that we just created. In the case of the animation update, what I do is I go in and set the offset. I'm just basically shifting everything over 2 pixels to the left each time that every 50 milliseconds. And then what I do is I set the ticker 2, if it's the one that's on the right-hand side, I set it to be 75 pixels offset from whatever the outer width is, in other words, the far right-hand side of the first text element. Then what we do is if it's completely off screen, then I reset it back off to 960. So the screen as far as the rendering size is 960 by 540 in size. There's kind of an odd semantics that most people don't realize that the TVs, they actually are rendering at 1920 by 1080, but most of the graphics and like all the menus and everything are done at 960 by 540, and then there's a scaler inside of the TV that scales it up to 1920 by 1080 and does a 2x in each direction. So what it's doing here is just moving it off screen so that way it'll start moving correctly again whenever the animation recycles. And then what we do here for the update ticker text is whenever it goes off screen, we clear out the text for that one and then put a new network update into that text field so that way when it starts scrolling on screen, you'll see a new content region. So here I'm actually going to go ahead and refire up the simulator again and show you a little bit of some debugging things that you can do inside this widget and show you a little bit more about the widget itself. So here you can actually see when I actually fired this off, there's 2 windows that are opened. This other one is a terminal window here. So what the terminal window is actually a live JavaScript console into your widget context. So in this case right here, I can see the widgets that are running by typing /widgets. I can see that the LinkedIn widgets is in the number 2 widget, so I'm going to go ahead and /widgets2. And now I'm actually inside the same JavaScript execution scope as the LinkedIn widget is running right there. So as I had mentioned, it's not a browser, but it does have an actual DOM structure. So here, whenever I go in and do $, which is a shorthand for basically dumping the document structure, you can see here that we have the widget, we have the script tag, which we had originally put in that main.tv, but we also now have some windows in here. So the one that we see at the moment is we have a window that's a snippet main. In other words, it's the snippet that we created. And you can see that there's an image object in here, which, as you remember, we actually created a JavaScript image object. Well, this is actually putting the image object directly into the page there and creating the DOM nodes that are relevant. So when we go into the sidebar here, if I do that again, you'll see that there's a lot more elements on the screen now. So there is frames, which you could kind of liken to a div or to a span in a browser world. There's images, there's text nodes, and then that's what actually creates the markup for that page there. So an example of something that, just to prove that this is a live environment here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a reference to the window itself, and then The dollar bracket there is basically doing the equivalent of a document.getElement by ID. And then I can do window dot, and then let's pull up the source code here to this. So we're going to do view main, and say we want to change the this controls.pitch. We want to change that text. So control. So if you saw, it was this.controls.pitch. So now we're doing windows.controls.pitch .set. So as you can see here, I just called set text on that text element, and then I go in and say hello JSConf, and you can see that it updated right here on the screen in real time and showed you that information. So you can basically go in and poke and prod and do anything inside of your widget experience right here through this terminal, what you're coding there. So I could go in and create new buttons, I could put them on the screen, I could control the whole interaction experience. Say, for example, I wanted to simulate the user actually hitting the enter key. I could do that, /key space enter, and that would actually take me right to the LinkedIn authorization page. An example here where we were talking about with the back button. So this is the back button. You can see where it has a title, which kind of gives it a window title, and then the back button there allows the user to actually go back just by hitting enter on that. The settings view that I actually told you about and didn't show you yet. So in this case here, it's just an about box. And if you notice in the code that I wrote here, we don't actually have an about box view anywhere inside of these views. So what we actually, if we look at the widget, at the init.js, you'll see that I'm actually using a view class of context.views.aboutbox. This is a system built-in view. There's several of them that you can actually go in and instantiate, and it just makes it quick and easy for you to be able to throw something up there on the screen that's relevant to the user. So in this case, that would be the LinkedIn, or in this case, the about view, and shows you more information about that. All right. So what is all the things, as I promised, I can kind of give you a quick brief overview there of developing a widget. What are some of the things that you can do in a widget? So number one is there's plenty of content-based services that you can do. You can do news, you can do social media. There's already a Facebook, there's already a Twitter widget out there. Basically, anybody that works for any other social networks out there, you can quickly develop a widget and have it running on the TV. Obviously, there's media, so whether it's video streaming, there's already a YouTube widget that allows you to be able to watch YouTube videos. There is a Yahoo video widget that I developed that allows you to be able to watch Yahoo videos that are hosted on Yahoo. There's plenty of other things you could do. It would be very easy to go in and develop a Vimeo widget and additional widget content of different types. There's a Showtime widget that allows you to be able to watch Showtime shows. Theoretically speaking, if Hulu had an H.264 stream, you could go in and watch Hulu videos right there on your television. There is an Amazon Unbox widget, which allows you to be able to watch the Amazon videos on demand stuff. There is a Blockbuster widget that actually allows you to be able to watch any of the Blockbuster instant streaming videos. There's a number of different photo applications from Picasa to Flickr to all the different types of photo sharing services that you can actually use as a widget. Music, right now there's already a Pandora widget. There is a, there's a Pandora widget. There's a couple different radio, like streaming internet radio providers. There's also, as another example of a kind of a media streaming, there is the just a whole bunch of different ones on the platform that you can actually go and you can develop a whole bunch more. Gaming, so right now there's a whole bunch of different kind of basic games like card games and Bejeweled and kind of things along those lines that are currently available on the platform. You could easily go in and develop a lot of different types of gameplay interactions. One of the examples that I was going to do if I had a TV here was actually going in and showing you where you could have a Palm Pre sitting in your hand running with Node.js and then be able to have the TV connect to that and then use the controls to be able to do a race car game. So that's, of course, possible there, and you can do multiplayer and things along these lines. TV interactivity is something that's just recently came out. The TVs are not in the field that support this yet, but they were announced at CES, and allows you to be able, so a widget can detect what TV show you're currently watching and provide relevant information. So maybe you wanted to show IMDb information for the movie that they're watching, or maybe you are Lincoln and you wanted to be able to show, every time there's a commercial, you wanted to be able to give the user the option to be able to see more information about LinkedIn and kind of go into a full screen experience. Those are things that you could do. Also, widgets could be developed easily for things like, American Idol. So you want to be able to do the voting, you could vote right there from your television screen and not have to call in or do anything additional. And then one of the things that I've actually used the Connected TV platform the most personally is kind of like stuff that isn't exactly intended uses for it. Like I went in and built a widget that shows the build box status. So a TV's up on screen and you can go in and see like what the current status is of all the different Hudson build projects and be able to see that information on the screen. I've also done some MRTG graphs and had them show up on the screen. It would be very easy to do like a booth kiosk. And one of the awesome things is because this is an open platform, you can develop anything and not have to actually publish it to the world. You can install it and run it right on your TV immediately just by putting it up into the gallery and signing up for a free developer account. So one of the things that you can do with that that's really cool is that I went in and built a home entertainment kind of a widget that allows me to be able to browse all of the different content that I have hosted on my Mac Mini. Some of that just standard H.264 streams, some of that audio, some of that pictures, stuff like this, and I can go in and be able to search through all of my DVDs that I ripped into H.264 streams and have that all running off of my Mac Mini, and then be able to see that on my widget and be able to search through the movies and be able to play them instantly. That's something that any of you here in the audience could do, and it would take you. I mean, I could give you the source code of the one that I wrote, or you could actually build it yourself literally in a couple hours and be able to show all of your content and install it on the TV. And most of you, if you've bought a TV since 2009 and you spent more than about $700 for it, or you bought one in the last year and spent more than $300 for it, you probably already have the connected TV stuff on there. You just didn't realize it because it's not well communicated on the boxes and things like this. So I also did kind of like a little sample here of some different experiences so you could be able to see the different widgets. So up here in the upper left-hand corner, you can see the Widget Gallery, which allows you to go in and install widgets. In this case right here, it's actually showing the new Widget Gallery that's getting ready to launch that allows you to be able to purchase and buy applications. The one in the top middle is a Flickr slideshow, which shows kind of an example of having images in the sidebar. The third one, as we saw, was like having a TV picture and then having the dock across the bottom. The fourth one, which is on the bottom left-hand side, is actually kind of an interesting one. So say you're watching the Home Shopping Network. I don't know why anybody in this audience would be, but if you're watching the Home Shopping Network and you wanted to go in and purchase something immediately, well, you could actually have a Home Shopping Network widget that actually knows what you're currently seeing on TV and then has a Buy Now button and allows you to purchase it immediately right there. And then a fifth one is an example. This is from the Flickr widget, but it's actually using a standard control that's available in the framework that allows you to be able to do kind of a slideshow and then with a kind of a film strip across the bottom so users can jump ahead in the slideshow and be able to see additional things. So kind of wrapping up here, for more information, obviously one of the best sources for the Connected TV platform is go to connectedtv.yahoo.com. There you can see tons of developer information. You can see a whole bunch of videos about how to do different things on the platform. I apologize, it's my face, my video that's up there on all those. And so you'll have to endure my voice a little bit longer if you want to watch through those. There's tons of documentation, tons of sample code. Then, obviously, if you're interested in getting involved on the LinkedIn developer APIs, go to developer.linkedin.com, and there's tons of different things that you can do with that. Happy to talk to anybody throughout the conference about either one of those two. And then some more information about myself. Obviously, you can find me at my website, jeremyjohnstone.com. I have a crap load of stuff that's up on GitHub, so you can find me there, or via Twitter, via the Twitter user ID, which if any of you were in here earlier this morning, you probably know my Twitter ID already because apparently I was the biggest bandwidth upstream consumer this morning. So, any questions? If we have time? We don't. Okay.
Happy trails to you until we meet again.